Welcome to Slayer the Alchemist, where we discuss all things heavy metal and hard rock. On today's episode, let's discuss Saxon and their 1983 album, Power and the Glory. This has always been my favorite Saxon record. I know a lot of other people might point to Wheels of Steel or Strong Arm of the Law, and I do really like those albums. Also, I did a video on both of those albums in one video. I'll leave that linked in the description down below. But this has always been my favorite Saxon record, and I think it's because for me, it has the most like metal sound to their early stuff, the 80s stuff. I mean, I think the last like so many Saxon records that they've put out in the last like 10, 15 years have just been fantastic and very heavy metal. But for me, this is their most metal sounding from that era. Part of it is maybe to the production. I really like the production on this. Jeff Glicksman, who also did The Eternal Idol and Seventh Star of Black Sabbath and a bunch of other things. I think the guitars sound great. You can really hear the bass on here from Steve Dawson. It reminds me a little bit of Steve Harris sometimes, the way he moves around. Again, the guitars from Graham Oliver and Paul Quinn are great. They got a lot of really cool riffs and great solos. And this is the first album with Nigel Glockler on drums, and I think he really shines on this. There's a lot of great drumming, and maybe that also sort of kicks the energy up on this album another notch, and again gives it more of that metal feel. When I hear this record, it kind of reminds me of Paul Di'Anno era Iron Maiden at times, which is cool, and again probably why I really like this one. The title track, Power and the Glory, maybe my second favorite song on this album. It's great, very anthemic. Biff sounds fantastic on it. Red Line is great. Warrior, Nightmare. Now my record is I'm not sure how to pronounce this, Carrier version of it, and that has Susie Hold On in place of Midas Touch, which is disappointing. Don't really like Susie Hold On. I think it's a little too melodic. I just don't like that chorus. It's a little too, I don't know, upbeat or melodic sounding for me. It's catchy, I'll admit that, but I much rather would have Midas Touch in place of it, which I guess is on, I don't know, maybe the other, I don't know if this is I don't think this is the US version of this, but the other versions of it have Midas Touch on it, so I prefer that over Susie Hold On. This Town Rocks, I mentioned Nigel Glockler earlier, and he just comes out right at the beginning of this, really over the top, like since like a Motorhead, filthy animal type of overkill, that type of like fast drumming. I love this era when, it's not thrash, definitely not thrash metal yet, but bands are sort of pushing the limits of playing fast. It hasn't quite reached speed metal yet. It's like traditional metal, but just played really fast, which I think is cool. Watching the Sky, great. I mentioned Midas Touch already, and I love, this is probably my favorite song on the album, The Eagle Has Landed. Love the moody intro. Always reminds me a little bit of Scorpions. Is it from the Black Ad album? Is it the last song on Black Ad album? Is it China White, I think it's called, where the bass is just playing that repetitive line and the guitars are kind of hanging over the top of it. I love Biff's delivery in it, the way it gets really heavy. I'm sure some other bands have covered that song, but I would love to hear a doom metal band like tune down, slow it down, just a little big, thick, heavy guitars on that. I could really picture that being a really cool song for a doom band to cover. All right, so for me, again, this is my favorite Saxon record. I tell the story all the time about how when I first started getting into metal, I used to listen to college radio stations, and this one particular station used to play a ton of like Motorhead, Saxon, and so I was hearing all these like first 3, 4, 5 Saxon records, and I've just always liked this one. I always loved the cover on it. I think it's a very metal cover, this dude here with the helmet on and the molten lava fingertips or whatever is going on there. Awesome. And after this with Crusader, I love the title track to that. Fantastic, but that album's kind of a mixed bag for me. It feels like that's when they're kind of shifting towards trying to get a song on MTV or a radio hit or something like that, or big international hit or something, and they sort of, to me, they get confused, Saxon, for a little while there in the later part of the 80s until they really come back around. Like I said, the last the 2000s and on, I don't know how to think about it, but the last Inner Sanctum, all those most recent Saxon albums I think are just fantastic. And I've seen the band a bunch of times live, and they sound amazing live, just tons of energy. So, all right, Power and the Glory, Saxon. What do you guys think of that? How do you rank that in these early Saxon albums? How do you rank it compared to Denim and Leather, Strong Arm of the Law? What am I missing? Wheels of Steel, those early, even the first Saxon album. I love the first Saxon album. I know it's kind of an oddball record, and I don't know if I've done a video on that. If I have, I'll leave it linked in the description down below. If I haven't, I think I will, because I do really like that album. It's kind of odd. It's almost like a progressive feel to it at times, but this is my favorite from that era. So let me know what you guys think. How would you rank it compared to the other classic 80s stuff? Let me know in the comments down below. To see you again, make sure you stay heavy, stay metal.